So in this video, what I'm going to be talking about is how to use jQuery to perform an Ajax, that asynchronous JavaScript XML HTTP request, a background request that loads data from the internet on your server and pulls it back into the client once the client has already been loaded. So if we look at my index.js, this is my server. It's a fairly straightforward server again. I'm using Node, I'm using Express, I have my app class object, I'm listening for incoming requests. I have two endpoints. I have the default endpoint, which renders index.hbs, which we can look at in a moment. And then finally, I have a background worker endpoint. This is a separate endpoint that's kind of a proxy for more complicated things that are to come later on. All he does is he says hi. He is not a very smart background worker right now. He has one job, and his job is to say hi. So I'm going to open my website right now. And the functionality is that we've got something that says hello world over here, and ultimately it's going to go and it's going to get that hi button. So it's going to say this, it's going to go and fetch hi without reloading the page. So how do we make this happen? I'm going to refresh the page. I'm going to reload the page right here. So how do we make this happen? So I'm going to look at the source of this guy, and you can see HTML5. I've got a body tag. I have my div. It's of class content. I don't have any class styling going on over here. Inside of my div, I've got a paragraph with an ID pmain, so this means he can be selected by JavaScript, and I've got a button of type button. His onClick is assigned to be this method fetch from server, which we're going to assume to be as defined down in JavaScript down here. There you go. And he's begging you to press him over here. I have a script where it loads jQuery in from an external CDN. Great. This is going to, when the page loads, go off to this URL, pull jQuery into this page, and then include the jQuery $ namespace into this page's JavaScript. Fetch from server goes over and it's going to run this particular function. What fetch from server does is, first thing it does is it makes an object. So I'm making an object over here. This object has several different keys, and these keys are not arbitrary. These keys are going to be used by Ajax, by the jQuery function named Ajax. The jQuery function named Ajax is going to be expecting to be fed an object that has keys that are like URL, which is where to go to, right? So it's going to go to this background worker, right, that says hi. It's also expecting a type. Is it get, post, put? It's also going to be expecting a directive as to what to do when it actually comes back with data. In this case, it's the name of a function on server response. You could easily make this an anonymous function or whatever at this point. You could even turn this guy into an anonymous object instead of having it be a named object that goes back and forth inside of here. Success is going to be what is run if the asynchronous request actually goes right. So at some indeterminate point in the future, after Ajax goes off and it tries to get the information from this page, it is going to run this method. So I tell Ajax, I tell jQuery basically, I use the jQuery namespace and I say, okay, go ahead and make an XML HTTP request according to these parameters. It goes off to this URL with get, and when it's done, it runs on-server response. Okay, on-server response comes down here. Notice that this is going to be expected to be passed a variable at this point, or an argument, excuse me. And the argument is going to be logged, and then I'm going to take this string, because it's just sending me back a string, and I'm going to stuff it into the inner HTML of p-main, which was defined up here. And we saw this work already. I pressed this, and it says hi. So what we're doing right now is the same thing that we saw before with the XML HTTP request. However, it's a little bit streamlined. It's a little bit more straightforward to say, hey, go off to this URL, do it of type get, and when you're done, run this function. And in particular, if you have more complicated requests that you want to make, in particular like passing arguments, this is going to be very extensible, and it's going to be very clean, and all you have to know is that, okay, we're running $.ajax, we're going to be running this Ajax thing out here, and it's going to be going off and making this particular web request. So response test is a string, and we can go back, and if I were to look at the log over here, so I'm going to bring up my developer tools with the F12 on Windows. Every time I press this hi, we can see, oh yeah, it's telling me hi, lots of highs. And you might see that there's a little bit of a lag, because there actually is a lag. It has to go off to the internet, and it takes some time to go to the server. What you also will notice is that this remains on my default PC Cosic page. We never see the URL of the background worker, and I like the name background worker in this case because it implies that he's doing something without you actually seeing it, right? Like we're still on this endpoint, but we're going off and we're fetching information from the server over here, and this is a really convenient way of getting information off of your server without actually having to reload the page.